Hi, this is Sarit Switzer, and welcome to the It Is Taught podcast, a podcast devoted to the teachings of Rabbi Shner Zalman of Liadi as recorded in his most famous work, the Tanya. My hope for this show is to make these teachings accessible and relatable to the average person, regardless of prior Jewish education or affiliation. The episodes follow the prescribed daily study portions and are meant to serve as practical lessons in how to live your life as your true self and develop an authentic and powerful relationship with your Creator. I have personally experienced the effects the study of this work has had on me, and I'm excited to share what I can of this knowledge with you. So please join me on this journey of learning, self-growth, and connection with your source. Hi, and welcome to the It Is Taught podcast. This is episode 545 for the first of Sivan in a regular year. So for the past few episodes, we've been discussing the mechanism that underlies creation. We've been talking about this idea of the Shechina, which we know of as the divine indwelling, and how the Shechina descends from level to level within creation in order to vivify each subsequent world until we get to our physical world here. And it was a very neatly outlined process, which you can go back and listen to previous episodes to get the full picture of what's going on. But today, what we're going to really talk about is how there's actually a blip in this system. And this very orderly process whereby the Shekhinah descends from level to level to level and becomes further and more vested and enclosed and concealed as it descends from level to level in order to accommodate further and further coarseness in creation and further more feeling of like selfhood and separation from God, from its source. There's a blip in this system. And the blip was first and foremost historically found in what we know of as the first temple. And what this is really addressing is a bigger question, which we had brought up already several episodes ago, about this idea of how if God is really everywhere and in everything and there's no place devoid of God, how is it that we have some places that we consider to be holier than others, where we say that God is more present, so to speak, in a certain way or more revealed than he is in others? So what we're going to learn about today is about a place like this, is about a place which was found in the first temple, which was known as the Holy of Holies, which within it the ark, the holy ark, was contained, which housed the tablets of the Ten Commandments. And we're going to talk about how it is that in this place, in this very sacred place, what makes it so sacred is the fact that it actually somehow was able to circumvent the normal order of creation. So before we begin, I'll just, for context, give like a really brief recap of the orderly aspect of creation that we've been discussing in the past couple of episodes. And again, if you want more details on it, then please go back and listen to previous episodes. But in brief, what we discussed is this idea of the Shekhinah. And we discussed how the Shekhinah is really the source and origin of everything that we know of as vitality and life here in our world and in all of the worlds above us as well. And we translate this word Shechina to mean divine indwelling. And another way to understand it is to think of it in terms of it being Malchus of Atzilus. So what that means is that the world of Atzilus is the highest of all the four general worlds. If you've been following along, that hopefully is becoming a little bit more familiar to you. And the Malchus of that world, or of any world, is the lowest point. The Malchus is the point of kingship, it's sovereignty. So what that means, it's the point at which that world becomes expressed to the outside, where it relates to that which is other than that. Just like a king, when we think of a person who is also a king, the king aspect of them is the part of them that relates to their subjects. And we talked about how this Shechina, or this Malchus of Atzilus, in order for it to come down and descend and be manifest in every subsequent world below it, it needed to become enclosed in certain garments, because otherwise its light would be too powerful. And we talked about how the garments in which it clothes itself, it vests itself, are nothing other than the will and wisdom of God, because the will and wisdom of God actually come from a higher place than this place of sovereignty. So this is why they have the power to contain within them this Shechina. this indwelling. And the will and wisdom of God we talked about also are the Torah and mitzvahs. This is God's will and wisdom in the world. And so what happens is that this Shechina becomes vested in these garments, and it descends from world to world, becoming subsequently further and further concealed and further hidden from the worlds as it descends, in order to, again, kind of make space for these creations, for these worlds down here. And the way by which it happens is that we start from, so let's say if we're starting from Malchus of Atzilus, which is that origin point. So this Malchus of Atzilus becomes enclosed within the world below it on its highest level. So the world below Atzilus is Bria. So Malchus of Atzilus becomes enclosed in the Chabad of Bria, the brain of Bria, which is otherwise known as the Chamber of Holies of Bria. And then this Chamber of Holies of Bria, aka the brain of Bria, becomes then vested in the Malchus of Bria, that lowest point of Bria, which creates all of the angels and the souls and the different creations that are found there, including what we know of as the Gemara. And then this Malchus of Bria then becomes vested within the Heichal Kodesh HaKadoshim, or the brain of Yetzirah, which is below that. And this whole chain of reaction continues until we get to our physical world down here, which, if you follow the logic, then basically our physical world down here, which we experience as being the Malchus of Asiya, comes from the brain of Asiya, which comes from the Malchus of Yetzirah above that. So I hope that's not too complicated. It really does follow a very logical progression. So it may sound like a lot of terms, but it's pretty straightforward if you're able to like kind of map it out. So now coming to today's episode, and what we're going to be discussing today is coming back to that first temple. So we know that the first temple, we know that the tablets, the 10 tablets, these were physical objects. These were manifest down here in our physical world. So thus, by virtue of the logic we've been discussing, then these physical objects, just like every other physical object here in our physical world, should be very much vested and concealed and covered up with many layers of concealment in order for us to experience God's Shechina down here. But what we'll learn today is that somehow these tablets were able to circumvent this process, and were able to be manifest and to be able and to reveal godliness in a much more direct way than regular physical objects. So let's get straight into the text and see how the Alter Rebbe explains this, and hopefully we can have a little bit more clarity about this. So for context, we are in the beginning of chapter 53, which is actually the last chapter of Likkutei Amarim. Very exciting, and we're going to move on to a new chapter. So the Alter Rebbe begins by describing the time of the first temple. And he says that in this first temple, we know that there was the Aron, the ark, which contained within it the luchos, the tablets. And these were found in the Kodesh HaKadoshim, in the Holy of Holies, within the Beis HaMikdash, within the temple. And in that place of the Kodesh HaKadoshim, which had within it the ark with the tablets, the Shechina, which again we know is the Malchus of Atzilus, which in other words means the revelation of the light of the Ein Sof Baruch Hu, the light of God. So we know that this Shechina, this manifestation of godliness, rested there and was vested within the 10 tablets with more intensity and more revelation than even that which was found in the chamber of Holies, which were above in the supernal worlds. So think about that for a minute. So again, remember, we talked about how in the general descent of creation and the way that creation happens, then each subsequent world, so the Malchus of Atzilus becomes vested within the Heichal Kodesh HaKadoshim, the Chamber of Holies of Bria, which is a very high world. Then that translates into the Malchus of Bria. The Malchus of Bria becomes translated vested within the Heichal Kodesh HaKadoshim of Yetzirah, which then becomes vested through the Malchus of Yetzirah in the Heichal Kodesh HaKadoshim of Asiya. So what the Alter Rebbe is teaching us here is he says that the radiance of the Shechina, the way the Shechina was revealed in that place of the Kodesh HaKadoshim, the Holy of Holies in the temple, with the tablets, was an even greater radiance, an even greater intensity of revelation than even the Heichal Kodesh HaKadoshim of the supernal worlds. So how could this be? So the Alter Rebbe explains, he says that this is because the tablets, what were the tablets? The tablets had on them the Ten Commandments. And the Ten Commandments are the entirety of the Torah because they come from God's supernal chokhmah, God's supernal wisdom, which is higher than the world of manifestation, higher than the Alma Descalia. So if you've been taking notes, if you've been following along, what is the Alma Descalia? The Alma Descalia we described is actually another synonym for Malchus of Atzilus. And so that's when we're talking about, basically what the Alter Rebbe is teaching us is that when we're talking about the Torah, and especially when we're talking about like the Luchos, the Ten Commandments, which contain within them the entirety of the Torah, we're talking about something very, very lofty. We're talking about something which stems from a place that's higher than the Shechina itself, that's higher than Malchus of Atzilus. And so thus, when we're taking this very lofty thing, when we're taking this Torah of God, which again, we learned about this before, that it comes from a place that's higher than the Shechina, which is why the Shechina is able to vest itself within it. In order for this Torah to come down into the physical world, and in order for it to be engraved in physical rock, so the tablets were actual stone, right? It it was not. It didn't come down by way of like level to level in like this like chain like reaction that was like according to the natural order of descent as that we've been talking about, because this physical world, it acts according to nature. It acts according to physical nature. However, the luchos, the tablets, there was something very special about them. They were the work of God. So it's something that was it's not a natural, like they may have looked natural in a sense that they were made out of stone and made out of like physical material objects, but it was like a physical object that wasn't really of this world. It was of God. It was something that was made by God, and it's said about it that this is in Shmot chapter 32:16. It says Maaselo kimhema v'michtav michtav elokim hu, that it's the work of God. These tablets were the work of God, and the writing was the writing of God. So it's hard for us to understand what this means exactly, because it's like a physical object, but not really of this world. So these tablets were coming from a place that was like way beyond the nature of this physical world, because this physical world comes from the Shechina, which is in the Heichal Kodesh HaKadoshim of Asiya. So again, if you follow that whole map of the outline of how creation happens, our physical world comes from the chamber of Holy of Holies of Asiya, which gives vitality and existence to the entirety of the world of Asiya, which includes our world. So our world isn't even just Asiya. Asiya is like a big world. Our world is like the lowest rung of Asiya, and so the way that Asiya in general and also including our world receives its vitality in a general sense is from this level of the Shechina within Asiya, which is the Heichal Kodesh HaKadoshim, the chamber of Holies of Asiya. And so again, to remember, this Shechina, which gives vitality to all of the worlds, it is coming from the Malchus of Atzilus. That's its original source. But again, Malchus of Atzilus is the lowest of all aspects of Atzilus. So what is higher than Malchus of Atzilus? So there's something called Chokhmah of Atzilus, the Chokhmah Ilah of Atzilus. This is the supernal wisdom of Atzilus. What is the supernal wisdom of Atzilus? This is the entirety of the Torah, which was actually found in the Ten Commandments. And so the source of the Ten Commandments is not like we experienced them down here in this world. We saw them on those tablets, but actually their true origin, their true source, like their true home, was actually in the supernal wisdom of Atzilus. And this supernal wisdom of Atzilus became clothed within the Malchus of Atzilus, because if you remember the formula, every world, the brain of every world becomes enclosed in the Malchus that's within that world. So thus, by extension, the Chokhmah of Atzilus did become clothed within the Malchus of Atzilus, and it also became clothed in the Bria as well. But it didn't go down any further than that, because these two worlds of Atzilus and Bria are the only worlds which are truly unified with God. And truly like they don't really see themselves as being separate from God. So Atzilus, in a real sense, in the sense that it really all the creatures within Atzilus literally have no existence of their own apart from God. They're totally nullified in their source. And in Bria, while there is like a separation, like there is now a creation, there's extremely aware of the fact of this God that everything is nullified to, and they're striving to return back to their source at all times. So they have this awareness of the all-encompassing nature of God. So this is why these two worlds do have this aspect of the Chokhmah of Atzilus within them. And so this is really what we're talking about when we talk about the Shechina in its pristine, unadulterated state. Because while it's true that the Shechina does descend from world to world in that whole chain and map that we've been discussing earlier, it comes down in a very concealed way and in a very, I don't want to say compromised way because it's not compromised exactly, but it is hidden and it's very like not revealed. It's very opaque. However, in its more pristine state, in its actual like manifest state, this is only found within the worlds of Atzilus and Bria by virtue of this Chokhmah of Atzilus, this supernal Chokhmah within Atzilus. And so this Shechina that we're talking about, this very, very lofty Shechina, which is really only connected to the two highest worlds, which are totally nullified to God, this is the same Shechina which dwelled within and rested within the Kodesh HaKadoshim, the Holy of Holies, in the first temple. And the way that this was able to happen is by virtue of the fact that that's where the tablets were. That's where the tablets with the 10 Commandments were found. And these 10 Commandments were engraved upon the tablets in a miraculous way. So the Gemara actually discusses this miraculous nature of the tablets, of the engraving upon the tablets, in the sense that that if you look at the letters Samech and Mem, which are both found in the 10 Commandments, if you are familiar with Hebrew letters, they are totally circular. Like they don't have any, like if you picture like an engraving of the letters in the stone. So for each of the other letters, it's like you can picture, okay, somebody went and like engraved those letters in the stone, and there's some part of the stone that stays there, some part of the stone that is not there, and that's how you can see the shape of the letter. But when it comes to the letters Mem and Samech, both of them are like circles. So if you were to just like engrave a circle into a stone, the middle part would fall out, right? If we're talking about regular stone. But in the case of the 10 Commandments, that actually didn't happen. In the case of the 10 Commandments, the Mem and the Samech were just like hovering there like that. So that was one way that we could actually see in a perceivable way with our eyes the miraculous nature of these 10 Commandments in the stone. And this is because they were actually godly. They were made from God. They were the work of the living God. It's called Maaseh Elokim Chaim. And then the Alter Rebbe concludes this part, and he says in brackets that this is what we call the Alma des Kasya. This is the hidden world, which nests within the world of Bria, as is known to people who know Kabbalah. So he leaves off in a little bit of an obscure note, like kind of like opening up a whole other can of worms, which I'm sure we could get into another time. But the basic idea, just to conclude and bring all of this together, is to really understand the miraculous nature and what was so special and amazing about the first temple, specifically the Holy of Holies in the first temple, within which the 10 Commandments were found within the Aron, within the Ark. In the sense that these 10 Commandments really, even though they were physical, even though they were like engraved on physical stone, they somehow managed to circumvent the natural order of creation, and they didn't behave, nor were they like regular physical objects. Because while regular physical objects have to go through this normal chain of descent from level to level and from world to world, the 10 Commandments, by virtue of the fact of them being Torah and them being containing within them the entirety of the whole Torah, they are a manifestation of God's will and wisdom, which comes from a much higher place than this Malchus of Atzilus, which is the source of all nature, of all of the regular orders of creation. And so these tablets are basically, in other words, they're a manifestation. They are they serve to be a tangible, evidence, like a tangible revelation of this higher level, of the level of the supernal wisdom of God, the supernal wisdom in Atzilus, which is really connected only to the two highest worlds of Atzilus and Bria, which are the more concealed worlds, like they're more lofty worlds because they are much more nullified to God. So I hope that was not too complicated for you guys. I know we're getting into a lot of terminology and a lot of technicalities, but stick with it. Bear with us. We have just another couple of episodes left, and then we're going to be finished with this book, and then we're going to move on to the next section of the Tanya. Very exciting, and it's really cool stuff. And again, while these terms might sound really confusing if you're not so familiar with them, if you do pay attention, if you do take notes, maybe you'll start to see that there really is a logical flow with through it all. And I'm trying as best possible to map it all out for you guys. So yeah, so that's it. If you have any questions, any comments, if there's anything I said that maybe you want clarified in some way, please leave comments in the YouTube. That's probably the best place to do it, in the YouTube comments underneath the YouTube link for this episode. And I'd love to hear from you guys, and we'll continue along these lines tomorrow and hopefully further unpack all of these really intense ideas, and I'll speak to you then.
Thanks for listening to the It Is Taught podcast, hosted by Sarit Switzer. This podcast is dedicated in loving memory of my maternal grandfather, Avraham Yitzchak ben Binyamin HaKohen of blessed memory. Music by Shechina. If you enjoyed this episode and would like to support the show, please share it with others and subscribe on YouTube, Apple iTunes, Spotify, or wherever you listen to podcasts. And make sure to leave us a 5-star review. To find out more about the It Is Taught project, including more information on my soon-to-be published book, please visit our website, itistaught.com. To catch the latest from me, follow me on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Looking forward to speaking with you tomorrow, and until then, have a great day.